afternoon or evening or whenever it is that you're watching this. Welcome to Beyond the Page Live. I'm Jennifer Crosswhite, book coach and editor with Tandem Services with Stephanie Fager, a book marketing expert extraordinaire from Empower PR Group. I did forget to text you how to spell extraordinaire.
I know when I went to get in, I'm like, I still don't have, I'm going to still stick with expert until.
That's just how much, my brain, it's like out of sight, out of mind. It really is.
There's just a lot of moving pieces. And
a
actually,
lot.
yeah, I was talking to an author yesterday. I was doing some work for him, and I was sharing my screen because sometimes it's easier, as you know, when we're doing complicated things to see for people to see what you're doing to follow. And I pulled up the project management tool that we use to navigate some stuff. And I said, okay, so how did this go? And I was making a note, and his eyes got real big. I was like, what? And he's like, I don't know how you manage all that. Like, oh my gosh, without this thing, I would implode.
Right? Yes.
Yeah. You need that stuff. But it's easy to forget. It's easy to forget things that, like, just anything. I mean, we know this. And that's why, honestly, that's why we do what we're doing on Beyond the Page, because it's easy to forget basic moving pieces of a book's journey as well. From mundane to massive.
And even when you're an author, the more you write, the more books you have to manage. And so one of our future things is, and we did talk about this in the past too, about software that can help you and things that can help you with your productivity. But it's also important to revisit that, because as you move on, you might need something. At the beginning, you might just do a whiteboard or a spreadsheet. Yeah. And as you get going on, and especially if you bring in people to help you, you have a lot more moving pieces, and you need some things to keep you accountable so you don't miss deadlines. And even when you are an indie author, you have deadlines. Weirdly, yes. Amazon
done.
Yes, Amazon doesn't like it if you miss pre-orders. You can have promos that you're part of. It's different things, and we're going to get definitely see Zan typed in extraordinaire for us in the comments, so we know how to spell it.
Thank you. Well, no, going back to the the tools, you should be growing. They should grow with you. I was talking with someone yesterday too about this, and we were talking about her business and how she navigates it. And she mentioned Notion, and she's like, I love Notion. And I'm like, oh, and I have no poker faces, Jen. I'm like, oh yeah, Notion. And I smiled. I was like, I loved it when I loved it. Until I outgrew it. And now when I work with people who are in it, and it's a requirement to get in it, I'm frustrated because the more complicated you get, the less it works. So I was kind of telling her, I was like, I used Notion until it didn't work anymore. And then I used Todoist until I needed more. And then that's when I pivoted into, ClickUp and Dubsado. And now those tools are robust enough to continue, right? We both use them. Robust enough to keep business, to grow with your business, right? Yeah. Like, how I used ClickUp 2 years ago and how I use it now are extremely different.
So true, right? And you grow with the tool as well. And I think that's, I know we're talking about book launch and marketing today, but this goes into it, because once you start, when you are writing your book yourself, it's mostly just you. You might work with a book coach, an editor, those kinds of things. And then that's you and one other person. But once you start talking about launching and marketing, now you're talking about beta readers, ARC readers, street teams, people you want blurbs from. If you're involved in any sorts of promotions and those deadlines, now all of a sudden the magnitude of what you're dealing with becomes more complex. And then it just gets more and more with each book. So it's never too early to start thinking about, and I would not say jump right into ClickUp, not at all. No. You don't need that. But Trello or Asana or Notion or whatever works for you, even a spreadsheet. But you do need something to keep track of what's going on when, because dates are going to become really, really important the moment you start thinking about a launch, because you're going to have to pick a launch date. When are you going to put your book out to the world and let the world see it? Well, and that's a very important date.
Right. And you need to build backwards and forwards from it. But also many authors, after you publish a book, you forget what it was like having a child, and sometimes you go round two, right? And so when that happens, if you use a tool where you can keep track of what you need done, you could replicate it in the future. Mhm. The other thing that I have really enjoyed is, especially when it comes to anything like you mentioned that is outside of just you, something that other people are involved or that you've asked help for, what have you. If you think, okay, so I'm going to reach out to endorsers, I need to get endorsements. So you
Mhm.
send out your endorsements. You like check, and it's off your marker board. It's off your your little list. You're going to forget about it. But if you have a system that
Yeah.
allows you to be reminded in a couple of weeks when people haven't responded or didn't get it
Yes.
back, then you come across as like the winner out there when you go, oh, hey, just checking in. Well, listen, you can't keep it all in your brain,
You
but it's in a
cannot.
tool. And so you were forward thinking. When I had Kerrigan used to be a part of our team over here, and when she was working here, there was something she said. I love it. She goes, when that happens, it's past you helping future you.
Yes.
So
So true, right?
how
Usually
can that
past
feel?
you usually past you does not help future you. Usually past you screws over for future you. So, try to think of the you in
Right,
the future and how you can help her.
right. Flip the switch, right?
Yes.
And be thinking about those things forward, right? Like, so if well, and even beyond that, we like let's say you want to do a massive book launch and bestseller campaign. Well, you can say I want to do it on a certain day, but you have these triggers to get there.
Yeah.
And so, you have to make sure you have the people in place to help you. Do you have the right categories? Have you gotten everything up on Amazon? Did the book actually launch? Are you telling people about it? Did you tell people how to tell people about it? Da, 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 right? The laundry list is out there. And that is something too you're going to have to follow up on. And it's all kind of the domino effect. So, absolutely. Of course, I've tried Trello and Asana, and I don't like those either, Jen. So I say dive into ClickUp. Just do it on the low end. You don't have to use it as complicated as you and I do.
That's true. We have it quite tricked out. That is
And there's
very
a free
true.
version, by
There
the
is
way.
there is a free version of it.
Use the free use
Yeah.
the free
That's true.
version. Anyway,
Yeah, it is
that's
it
a
is
great point for budget, right? Like
yeah.
pivoting to our topic today, not
Well,
everything has to be paid for.
right, absolutely, and we'll talk about some of the free options as well. And so as you're having your however you're planning, have a column for the budget. How much did you spend on these kinds of things? So, I am, an established author and I've have a lot of books out. And so I do some more complicated marketing things. One of the most expensive and complicated things you can do is a BookBub featured deal. And I got one. They're very hard to get.
Mhm.
They're very selective, but because it goes out to so many millions of readers and they're expensive. I mean, we're talking in the $500 range, depending on what category you're in. Mine is actually one of the cheaper categories. There are some categories that are like close to $1,000 to be in this, but it goes out to so many people that you get all of that back. And there are people that open their BookBub email every day to see what are the deals and what can I get. And they're very avid readers and they want to find new authors to follow. And
Yeah.
so when you get a BookBub deal, featured deal, because they also have BookBub ads, that you can really make a lot of money off of it. But then you also do things like ad stacking, whereas I pay for other promos around that, type thing. And I have to keep track of all that. Have I used them before? How effective were they for me before? And there's different costs to all of that. And so you're constantly have to weigh, is this a good deal? Is this not a good deal? And I spent quite a bit of time the last week, probably 15 to 20 hours
Mhm.
setting all of that up and figuring out what's the best deal, applying all these different things. And so that is the most complicated and more expensive end of things.
Mhm.
And again, that is not even something you do around a launch. The book I have it for is a book that's been out probably 4 years. It's a book 2 in the series because book 1 got the BookBub deal 2 years ago. So
Awesome.
it's an ongoing thing, right? You don't just launch your book and
Yeah.
forget it. You
Right.
need to constantly think about how are you going to continue to remind people, new readers,
Mhm.
that you have books. And so the more books you have a backlist that you can promote, which is really fantastic when you're not cranking out new books. So
Right.
those are all things to sort of keep in mind as we talk about this. But start with how
Mhm.
much should somebody spend on a book launch? I'm going to just throw
Mhm.
this one in your court because this is your bailiwick. And I have obviously thoughts on this too. But
Yes, well, I have lots of opinions. I think it boils down to who are you trying to reach
Mhm.
and where do they go for trusted information.
Yes.
I actually also am going to layer in, I think, where people will do their investment is likely not what they think the investment will be. So let me back out of what I just shared and share a bit more context. I come from a background of PR in the nonprofit space. So I am a believer in finding solutions to rally the troops with a shoestring budget. That's just how I was raised and brought up, which means my kick gut starting point will never be ads.
Mhm.
It will never be in paying for getting in front of somebody in the way that most people think. So 9 times out of 10, Jen, I hop on a 15-minute chat with an author and they want to figure out how they can work with the Empower PR group. And they start by going, okay, well, okay, I paid, $500 to have someone do some keyword searching for me. And then, I mean, I put another 500 in Facebook ads. I probably didn't spend enough money there. I guess I should have probably done. Now I'm going to go look into Amazon advertising. And I'm like, stop.
Stop.
Like, stop.
Yeah.
The money that right there, they probably spent, $1,000. If they would have invested that in being in a methodical approach to get a game plan in place and launch effectively, they would have sold more books, in my opinion.
Well, they confuse tactics with strategy,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
people will often say, what do I need to do to market this book? And they're thinking tactics. I need to buy this ad. I need to
Yep.
do this. I need to do this, right? No, first you need a strategy. And
Yep.
that is exactly where you come into play. We
Yep.
put together a strategy, then you might have some of these tactics, but those are all going to change depending on where you are in your career. If you are a new author, your goal is simply to get eyeballs on your book.
Right.
Later on, you're going to have different goals, but at the
Right.
beginning, nobody even knows who you are. So
No.
ads and all that stuff is total waste of money because you don't have any
Absolutely.
place else for them to go after they read your one book. So
Right, right. So it's the strategy versus the tactic like battle. And it is because marketing is something that is so hard to understand. It's easier to understand tactics, it's harder to
yes,
understand the strategy. So let me share some things to consider. So if someone comes to me and says, I'm writing a book and I want to launch it. There are 3 things that I recommend in the process, and I can give some specifics budget wise on considerations. But the first, it's our method. It's the author impact method. It's a 3-step journey to really make sure that you don't just have one spike at launch, but you have kind
right.
of that uphill
Yes.
curve that stays that way, or at least gives you enough momentum to keep running. So many people want to jump to the ads. I say we have to start with your platform. So I
Yes.
want you to look at how are people going to find you. If you have no platform, an ad will do diddly doop.
That's right.
And it's, or if you do if you, I mean, there was an author I helped once who was on a TED Talk and it was beautiful. And then she had nothing from it.
Nothing to
Didn't
follow
get
up.
anything.
You
No,
just lost all that interest. There was no
lost,
place for them to go.
she
Yes.
lost.
It's very
So
sad.
right. So when I talk about a platform from the and the platform can be, different for every person, but at the bare minimum, you do need a website. So there is a website cost. And I don't care who you are. I don't care what you want to do. Every author needs a website, even if
Yeah.
it's a single page website.
Yeah.
And a bad website will hurt you
Yeah.
more than none. So make sure that this is an investment for you. And you could go places and spend very little on a website, but you will get what you invest when it comes to that. I'm not saying you have to spend 10,000 by any stretch of the imagination, but I would definitely budget a couple $1,000s to get a good website that's beautifully branded, that tells your story, that is written not for you, but for somebody else. That's another
Yes.
game
I
changer.
think
Mhm.
I think you're bringing up a really good point. And there's this saying, begin as you intend to go on. And I
Mm,
think that's really wise to think about. There are some things where you're like, okay, I can kind of do the bare minimum now just to get in. There's some places where you can do that.
yeah, but
But
not
there are
here.
other places where you will shoot yourself in the foot if
Yeah.
you don't set it up properly. And
Yep.
so I'd say a website is one of those. You need to be able to let people feel like you're a professional, you know what you're doing. This is even more important in nonfiction than in fiction,
Yep.
but still important for fiction, where
Mhm.
you can
Oh
capture
gosh.
their email and all that kind of stuff. So I would say definitely website is one of those places where you can end up with okay, this is an okay website for now, but what if you have no ability to move your email list because it's captured, or no ability to add certain links and things that you might want to as you're trying to move up? So if it's not scalable,
Right.
it's going to be a real problem for you. And so I think
It
that's
is.
something to really think about at the beginning.
Mhm.
Um, Budgeting, as you're thinking about it, sometimes those low budget things are going to end up costing you more money in the long run, because you're
Yep.
going to lose a lot in trying to fix something that can't be fixed or scaled.
Well, and I can bring this up from experience. When I was publishing my first book, I had created a business to fund the journey of using a hybrid publisher and a book coach. And so that right there was, a $10,000 investment on my end, right? It was expensive. So when it came to website, I'm like, I know enough to be dangerous. I can create a website.
Right.
I spent 3 months, Jen, of every waking hour of those 3
Yes.
months learning how to do a website. And I was so darn proud of it, and it looked beautiful. And then one day I went to look at it, and it had turned entirely into code, and I
Mhm.
almost lost the whole website. At that point, I was like, I'm so glad I know how to do it, but I no longer do them for myself. Of course, we have someone on the Empire PR group, Sandy, who does our
Yeah.
author websites, and
Mine too.
her and yeah, she's wonderful. We work in tandem together. Didn't mean to steal that from your name, but we work in
Great
unison,
name.
collab. It is. We all work together, and
Yes.
I help with the content and design, and she's got design and build and accessibility and mobile. I mean, there's so many reasons,
That
but
stuff changes all the time too, right? And your job, Becca Syme said this, I quote Becca Syme all the time because I think she's fantastic. But in her newsletter this week, she said, you know what your one job is as an author? It's not to be a good admin. It's not to be a good web designer.
Mhm.
It's to be a good author.
Yes, I
So
love
I
that.
love that, right? Because that just brings it into focus. Where are you putting your time and energy?
It does.
It is this, and there's another one. Someone says, Wibbo, would I be better off writing? And
Mhm.
so I love that, because that's a great way when you start getting, you can really get into the weeds
It's
in
true.
marketing for sure. And so one of the things you have to ask yourself is, would I be better off writing?
Yeah.
Should I just hand this over to someone who could do it way better than I
Yeah.
do?
Yeah.
It'll be professional. It won't break.
Yes.
I know I did the same thing early on. I had my website break, couldn't be fixed, as old, whatever, old templates, codes, all that kind of stuff. And, now Google will penalize you for that. And
Yep.
so you need someone who can stay up with all that stuff. Plus, I've had authors who did their own website and then they got hacked, and then
Yep.
they lost their domain name
Yep.
because someone hacked them and they can't get into it. So how would you like to lose your own name and not be able to use your own name? I mean, that's terrible.
That's
So
terrible. I find that authors feel safer investing in someone to do their social media than to do website. And I'm like,
totally
stop.
opposite.
Are
Yeah.
you kidding? It's the opposite
Social
because
media, yeah,
your
has such a
website
low,
is your hub. And if
it's
you're
your
it
it's your
is
home base.
your
Yes,
home base.
it's your
And
home
you
base.
are launching a book for a reason. For the in the nonfiction space, it's usually because it's in alignment with a business. So you don't want to just be sending people to Amazon. You want them to come through
No.
you first so they know how to work with you and your other offerings. So yeah, I would definitely budget a couple of thousand at least to make sure. And I don't want to, and I'm going to just say this, Jenna, I know it's going to sound harsh. I am not the person that if you come say, oh, I can't figure out how to make that happen. I'm not going to feel sorry for you because I literally
Yeah.
started a business to
Yes.
fund this. So
Yeah.
I know what it means and what it's like when you don't
Yeah.
have the money. And I
Right.
know when you're in the beginnings, but I also know that I am giving you tough love and I am telling you, you need this. That is
Yeah.
a non-negotiable.
We're creative people. We can be very creative in how we come up with things. And
Yes.
so put that creative hat on, as again, why you need, as you're looking at your budget. And this is why we're giving you guys
Yep.
numbers, so you can realistically think about how much is it going to cost, and then you can figure out how to make it happen, because
Absolutely.
people are super, super ingenious.
Yep.
And you, as we talk about, on the Colby, you're a quick start. I'm a high fact finder. And I always say my ideas, I have some, but they take a long time. Like they're like planes lining up to land at
Woo!
LAX,
And I'm
right?
just
They're
flying
way out
planes
there.
hoping to not crash them. So there you go.
It's like, oh yeah, let's do this. And so I love it. It's a great thing. So even if you're like me and don't have a ton of ideas, you can still come up with ways to get stuff done, to
Yes, you
think
do.
of things, to talk to creative people who can help you come up with ideas.
Yep.
There are definitely ways, as people say, there are ways to make things happen if
There
you
are.
really want to. And you just need to
There.
even it might take more time than you would like, and that's okay too. Sometimes things just need to sit a little bit longer than be right now, right? There are some books that definitely need a little more time to bake.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So just don't neglect that in the process. There's more to your author platform, but when it comes to the budget side, that is a big one. The second part of the method that I think is around launch that people tend to overlook is how are you going to really kick it off with a bang? And that could have a couple of different layers. Some of it is a launch event. So some people would want to budget having an event. I had 3 launch events for my first book and I didn't pay for a penny except for a cake. I bought cakes for each of them. I had my cake lady make a cake. So they don't have to be financially expensive, but some people will invest a lot of money and really focus on getting their target readers in the room. So just be aware of that. I don't spend a lot of energy personally there, mainly because COVID changed a lot of things when it came to in-person events, but there's still really a lot of fun and a lot of value. But I do really believe in leveraging a launch team to help you kick it off and really tell the Amazon algorithms you mean business. So what I mean by that is how do you rally the troops, the people who already are connected to you and love you, to help you by helping them help you. Financially, if you were to do it by yourself, it could be done with a shoestring budget. You need time. Many times that is a cost that we don't always talk about.
Right.
You need time. You need time to learn if you've not done it. You need an email list, an email service.
Yes.
You can use a free version. That's fine, but you do need that.
Most of them do allow you to have like up to 1,000 people on your list and still be free. So totally take advantage of that. That's very key.
Exactly. And then you'll also want knowledge on ensuring what does it take to hit bestseller lists and stuff like that. So people who invest in using our service to help with that are investing in our team's ability to take that time and lift it from them so they can focus on other things. So we will help do all that setup. We'll help with the launch team execution outside of recruitment because you know those people. And we help with doing the research to ensure that you've got the right thing set up on Amazon that could trigger bestseller efforts and the nurturing. So, I mean, you could do it for nothing but your own time, or, you could do it on the flip side where you're investing a couple grand with having somebody come in and be a part of making sure that you are really launching to success. I really find that you don't have to do it, but I like this because this is your greatest chance of hitting a bestseller list for Amazon. It's also, if you come out of the gate with strong reviews and a strong purchase in the back end, it tells Amazon that people like your stuff. That kind of becomes a domino effect. It also gives you ongoing momentum, but you're nurturing people to become a street army to tell people about your book.
Yes.
And then on the flip side of that, Jen, this is the other part. It's just like writing a book. You're finished writing a book and you're like, oh, I thought I was done. No, I got to launch it. Okay.
Right.
The book. I think I'm done. Well, I got to keep momentum.
You got to keep the momentum. You can't let people forget. I mean, there's so many books out in Amazon and you want to keep finding new readers. And I know. It feels like all you ever say is buy my book, buy my book, buy my book. But guess what? They have so many messages coming out and then they hardly ever see those anyway, especially if you're using something like social media. Even listening into business podcasts and they're talking about messaging within a business, within a company. And they'll say things like, I've said this vision, I've said this mission statement a million times. Well, you know what? The time you're just about done saying it is the time where people will go, oh, wait, don't we have a mission statement? Right? And it's like, you think you're saying it all the time. And people they have so many things and they're not focused. It's not important to them. And so you really, when you feel like you're being obnoxious about it, that's probably like just the right amount of time. Now, there are people who literally are obnoxious about it. Yeah. And that is when, like your people that sell multi-level marketing product and they invite you over for dinner and you think you're having dinner and they're giving you a sales pitch. Like, please don't do that.
We're not talking about between icky marketing and authentic marketing. Yes. Icky marketing is when the goal is to sell a product and a product to people who don't need it and have not self-identified or show interest in wanting it. Authentic marketing is when you are giving value
Yes.
and when you are doing it to people who want that value, who have a problem and you can help them. So I have found that you're right. We've got to be methodical in how we're always being and showing up and being in front of people, but to do it in a value lens. I actually was I'm working with an author today on some projects for her, and we were talking about it this morning. And I said, you've got to come to the table and give value. I said, do you think that my social posts are pushy? I said, I work really hard for them not to. She's like, no, I love your content. I'm like, okay, but everything I'm doing on my content is related to a way that I could maybe help somebody.
Right.
But I'm not coming across, did you buy my book? Have you bought my book? Go buy my book. I'm not doing that.
Right.
Instead, I'm talking about being solutions to problems. And so that almost is the harder part of book marketing.
It's that ongoing part. And even in, I always like to think about, even in my newsletters, how can I offer something of value to my readers? And that could be, even in fiction, that could be entertainment. That could be a little, ha ha ha, look at what I did, or look what life is crazy for me. Or I always have like a little cat mischief section in my newsletters. But I also tell them what I'm reading and what audiobooks I'm listening to, because people love book recommendations, and they love my books, so they're probably going to like the things I read too. So it's not always a huge hurdle to overcome. It's, what would you share if you're sitting down having coffee with somebody and you're just talking about, hey, I read this great book, this was super helpful to me, or I'm learning this new thing about brain science and I'd love to share this with you. I shared that with my Tandem Services newsletter. Really, brain science is very interesting, and so a lot of really interesting things happening in that space. And so even in your regular newsletters, you can be sharing value so that they're eager to open your newsletters and say, oh my gosh, yeah, I'm always really curious because there's something in there that makes me laugh, or something that makes me think, or a new book recommendation, or whatever it might be. That kind of ongoing, and it reminds them of your name. Even if they just see your name in their inbox and they don't open it, they're at least remembering, oh, that's right, I remember that thing. And then, down the road when they have a need or whatever, then they can pick that up. But this is the advantage where your email list is super, super important.
It is.
Create a lead magnet, some free thing that you give away in exchange for their email address that is related to what you are offering them. So fiction, it's often a short story or a novella or something like that. Nonfiction, it can be worksheets or
lists, or
anything that goes with like a companion piece to your product. And then in the this is more true in the fiction world than in the nonfiction world. But in the fiction world, there you can do newsletter swaps with other authors.
You can do it in nonfiction too.
You can do it in nonfiction too. It's not set up as easily. But it's a great way. I do swaps with other, writers that write to the same audience, because it's not competition. I mean, I cannot produce enough books for people to read. So I want to be with other like-minded authors. That doesn't cost anything. That's a great way to build your readership and to let people know that's a very warm audience. There are also group promos that you can do with a group of other authors. Again, most of those are either free or minimal cost. Things like Book Funnel and Prolific Works, they actually have lists of those that you can join. And you can even set one up yourself on those sites. And so those are great things to think about. Even on Amazon, if you are in Kindle Unlimited, KDP Select, you can get 5 free days every 90 days, or run a discount promo, right? Those are things you can think about doing. Again, think about what your strategy is. Don't do this stuff willy-nilly.
Right.
But those are all inexpensive ways to keep reminding, especially when you are a new author and you don't have a huge email list, you don't have a huge following, to remind people, hey, I'm out here. Here's what I offer. And for people to discover you.
Yeah. And next week, we're going to be kicking off another month topic on visibility. And a lot of this kind of arm of the ongoing work is around visibility and how can you do that. So we'll share some good freebies. But I love what Zan just put in the comments. She asked a question: how early should you have a website and a newsletter? So it's the chicken or the egg, and I'll tell you it's the both. So I say a website, if you are asking it, Zan, you probably need it.
Zan, you need it. I can tell
You
you
need it.
where you are because I'm working on one of Zan's books right now.
Yes. Okay. So I say, you need a website when you are at a place where you are ready to start just talking about you externally, and you might not be ready to talk, but the world needs to know that it's out there, and that you want them to get buy-in and build consensus and energy and loyalty along the way. So I would say, as early as you have a core kind of message and theme as to why you're doing what you're doing. Even a simple website you could grow with. A newsletter too, I would say the same thing. I'm going to pause and not say newsletter, but maybe say email opt-in instead, because I think a newsletter is
yeah. We say that term, but I actually never use that term with my readers. I call it updates. I call it insider. You want to give it something because newsletter is just really a
right. Well, and even beyond that, what I want to get at is a newsletter, or just that idea for you, Zan, and anybody listening, is this idea that I constantly have to be talking to to people. And you might not be at a place where you know what you want to be talking to yet. That's okay, but you should always be collecting emails.
Yes.
So
well, Zan has in her case, she has a lovely blog because she lives in Spain in vineyards, right, with some beautiful pictures. And so she does blog about some of this, her experience, a little bit about being an expat and some of these different things about living there. And so that is all really great content that people would really be interested. They might not see your blog, they may not see your Facebook post or whatever, but then they're going to be like, oh, in my box, here's Zan's latest story about what life is like for her. And I think that's a really great way. It gives them a taste of your voice. And even though your book is not about a woman living in Spain in the vineyard, there is a lot about your energy and your personality and all that comes out in your writing, both in your blog and in your fiction. And so I think that is, you have plenty of content. You could easily start doing that right now.
Yes. So 2 things I want to give insights on, Zan, for you and others who might be listening, because we did talk about a website. If you go to, I'll have to take a look. I think it's season 3 of the Empowered Author podcast. I'm going to check while I'm looking. It's all on author websites. There's 6 episodes. It is season 4. Not 3, it's season 4. So I think that's a great place for people who don't have one or haven't considered it to start, because you can understand a little bit more about what a website can do for you. And then you have a more informed understanding of it when you go and sit down with someone to get help. Of course, Zan, our team, would love to help you if you're interested. Yeah. And then in regards to an email or email marketing, just to give you the heads up, sneaky peeky people, the next season of the podcast. So right now we are in inbound marketing, which is all about content. I'm looking at all my stuff. This is why remember those things we talked about at the beginning about how great it is to have all your stuff on place? Yep. So in the end of March, we will be kicking off a 6-episode season all about email marketing. And so I think you would find that also really helpful. If you're not currently connected and subscribing to the Empowered Author podcast, I think you'd find it helpful. I just think it's nice to understand a little bit about both as you dive in. And I try really hard on the podcast to make complicated things not so complicated.
And obviously we are talking just very broad brush things here. So you will go, oh, I didn't know about that. I need to go do a deeper dive. And so Stephanie does a great job in her podcast on really taking these things apart and digging into them. So absolutely recommend that. And sometimes I'm on there. So it's kind of
fun. You are. Sometimes I'm like, I'll text Jen in the morning, FYI, you're on this week.
It's kind of funny. Well, we are coming to time, but this book, my quote for the week, and this is, again, I'm working through Mind Your Mindset. I've got a glare on that with Michael Hyatt and Megan Hyatt Miller. The more I get into this book, the really fascinating it is they have a Business Accelerator podcast, and they're talking about the book because it just launched, and that's been really interesting. But again, it goes into the brain science, and I just as authors, I think we should be really aware of. I mean, anybody should, but I think as authors, we should really, really be aware of that. And there's this really, really great quote here that I think just is why books work, but it's also why your brain works. It's kind of interesting. The capacity to imagine a wide range of stories largely sets the bounds of our experience. Why? Because the stories at our disposal drive the strategies we use to pursue our goals. The
Mm,
ability to imagine a better state of affairs is what drives human progress,
mm,
achievement, and flourishing. The ability to reimagine our stories when we're stuck or stalled is what enables us to improve our lives, become more productive at work, take control of our health, become better spouses, friends, parents, and more. I mean, this is again what I always talk about, the power of story, but this is also the power of story that you tell yourself. And
yep.
so, what stories are you telling yourself? Are they true? Are they not true? And how can you leverage them to create the life that you really want? So, highly
Mm,
recommend. I'm working my way through it. I'll probably have a quote from it next week. I don't know.
I
Actually, no,
love
next week
it.
we're in your court next week. So,
Oh yeah. Ooh, I
but
got some good ones I'm moving. That's awesome, but it's so true. I mean, the power of story and how we consume story is big, but I've so when I talk about the power of perspective with my first book, I talk about the three stories that we have. We have the story that lives out here that the world sees.
Mhm.
We have the story that we write as authors, but we have the story that we think, and the thing, and that which you think becomes that which you speak, and that which you speak becomes that which you seek. So if you want to change what you do out here, you have to change what happens in
Yes.
here. And and just because we know that doesn't mean it's easy. It's a daily struggle, even for me to do.
Yeah.
And so as you're looking at this book journey, that is like a daily thing that you need to embrace. Like what are you doing to pour it? Are you reading a book? Are you listening to a podcast? Are you surrounding yourself by the people that'll pull you up? Are you doing post-it notes or getting dry erase and writing on your mirror? And what are you doing?
Right.
Because we live in a world that wants to tell you something differently. And especially when it comes to book marketing and shiny new objects out there every day, it's very easy to get swayed down a wrong path or a wrong mindset, and that derails you. And we don't want that. We don't want that for you.
Yes, absolutely. 100%. So, authors, this is our weekly reminder that you have power, your message has power, and your words have power, and your stories have power.
Yes.
So, we invite you to bring that to the page and beyond and join us each week as we talk about all things writing and book marketing.
See
All
you
right,
next week.
everyone, have a great week. Bye bye.
And bye, guys.